So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Bulma? So let's start the series. The first thing Naruto became aware of was the silence. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a snow-covered Konoha, or the tense stillness before a battle. This was an empty silence, a vacuum where sound simply ceased to exist. It was in this void that he tumbled, his body a plaything for forces he couldn't see, couldn't sense, couldn't fight. It felt like being ripped apart and stitched back together 1,000 times a second. He tried to reach for Kurama's chakra, for the familiar, comforting warmth of the Nine Tails, but it was like grasping at smoke. The connection was there, but muted, distant, as if separated by an ocean of static. Then, with a violent lurch, the nothingness ended. He hit something hard. Not ground exactly. It was too smooth, too unyielding. The impact drove the air from his lungs and sent a shockwave of agony through his right side. He tasted blood, metallic and sharp. He tried to open his eyes, but one was swollen shut, glued by something warm and sticky. Through the other, the world was a blur of intense, harsh light. He was lying on a white, seamless surface. Above him, a sky of a blue so deep and clear it hurt to look at. It was wrong. The sun felt wrong on his skin, harsher, more present. He tried to move, and a groan escaped his cracked lips. Everything hurt. His ribs screamed. His left arm was bent at an unnatural angle. He could feel the faint, frantic pulse of his own chakra trying to knit him back together, but it was slow, sluggish, like his very life force was confused by this new environment. Kurama, he thought, the name a desperate whisper in his own mind. A long pause. Then, a rumble, like distant thunder. I am here, Kit. Barely. This place, it feels strange. The very air is thick with a kind of energy I do not recognize. It is not chakra. It is louder. Naruto didn't have the strength to respond. He just lay there, his one working eye fixed on the alien sky, waiting for the pain to subside or for death to take him. He wasn't sure which he preferred at that moment. He thought of Sakura, of Sasuke, of Kakashi-sensei. He thought of ramen at Ichiraku's, of the Hokage monument, of the faces of everyone who had believed in him. Were they looking for him? Could they even find him here, wherever here was? A sound. Not an animal, but a low, mechanical hum, growing louder. It was a strange, whirring noise, unlike anything from his world. He tried to lift his head, but the world swam. The hum stopped, replaced by the soft crunch of footsteps on the hard white surface. A shadow fell over him, blocking the too bright sun. A voice, sharp and clear, with an accent he'd never heard before. What the hell? It was a woman. She was crouching over him now. He could make out a shock of aqua blue hair, and eyes that were wide with a mixture of shock and sharp, analytical curiosity. She was wearing a tight, white bodysuit with some kind of jacket over it. She wasn't a shinobi. She had no chakra signature he could sense. Nothing. She was a blank spot in his perception, which was almost more terrifying than facing an enemy. Hey, she said, her voice losing its initial shock and gaining an edge of command. Can you hear me? Are you conscious? Naruto tried to speak, but only a choked gurgle came out. He saw her gaze sweep over him, cataloging his injuries with a frightening speed. Her eyes lingered on his torn orange and black tracksuit, on the whisker-like marks on his cheeks, on the obviously broken arm. Okay, don't move. Just don't move. She was already reaching into a small, yellow capsule she'd pulled from her pocket. She clicked a button on top and tossed it a few feet away. There was a sharp pop and a plume of white smoke. When it cleared, a small, sleek, two-wheeled vehicle sat there. Naruto's eye widened, if that was even possible in his current state. A capsule? That turned into a thing? His chakra-addled mind couldn't process it. Magic? A summoning? No, there was no chakra. The woman, Bulma Briefs, though he didn't know that yet, was surprisingly strong. With a grunt of effort, she maneuvered him onto the back of the vehicle. He was dead weight, and every movement sent fresh waves of agony through him. He bit down on his lip, drawing more blood, refusing to cry out. That was one thing he could still control. Hold on, she said, getting on in front of him. And I mean that literally, because if you fall off and crack your head open at this speed, I'm not turning around. He couldn't hold on. His broken arm was useless, and his other hand could only weakly grasp a handful of her jacket. She seemed to understand. She reached back, grabbed his wrist, and pulled his good arm tighter around her waist. Don't you dare bleed on this jacket. It's designer. And then they were off, the wind screaming past them. Naruto closed his good eye, focusing all his energy on just holding on. The world was a blur of white and green and blue. He felt every bump, every turn in his broken body. He didn't know where he was being taken, or why this woman was helping him. In his world, a stranger in strange clothes would have been a threat. But here, he had no choice but to trust her. After what felt like an eternity, the vehicle slowed. He opened his eye. They were approaching a cluster of bizarre, dome-shaped buildings, impossibly round and gleaming in the sunlight. They pulled up to the largest one, and the woman helped him off. His legs buckled immediately, and he would have collapsed if she hadn't grunted and held him up, draping his good arm over her shoulder. "My hero," she muttered sarcastically, struggling under his weight. "You weigh a ton. What do they feed you where you're from?" They half walked, half stumbled through a doorway that slid open automatically. Inside, it was even more bewildering. Lights without flames. Walls with moving pictures. Strange, humming machinery. It smelled sterile, like nothing he knew. She steered him into a room that was blindingly white, with a single padded table in the center. An examination room. "Okay, big guy on the table. Now." She practically dumped him onto it. He lay there, panting, as she immediately started pulling out more strange devices. She ran a scanner over him that beeped and flashed. Multiple fractured ribs. Compound fracture of the left ulna and radius. Severe contusions all over. Possible internal bleeding. She muttered to herself, reading the data. "Your vitals are weird. Your heart rate is slow for someone in your condition, but your cellular regeneration is off the charts. It's like your body is trying to heal itself, but it's doing it wrong. Clumsily." She looked at him, her blue eyes sharp. "Who did this to you? Who are you?" Naruto looked at her. He saw no malice in her face, only intense, scientific curiosity and a faint line of worry on her forehead. He took a shaky breath. "Naruto," he croaked, his voice a dry rasp. "Uzumaki Naruto." "Uzumaki Naruto," she repeated, testing the sounds. "Well, Uzumaki Naruto, I'm Bulma. And you are the most interesting thing I've found in a decade. Now hold still. This is going to hurt." She picked up a device that looked like a silver gun, but instead of a barrel, it had a glowing blue tip. Before he could ask, she pressed it against his broken arm. There was a low hum, and a strange, tingling sensation flooded his limb. It wasn't painful, but it felt alien, like his bones were being rearranged by tiny, invisible hands. It was nothing like a medical means healing jutsus. It was cold, precise, and entirely impersonal. He watched, fascinated despite the pain, as the swelling in his arm began to visibly recede. He didn't speak. He just watched her work. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, a small strand of blue hair falling across her face. She was completely focused, completely in her element. There was a quiet competence in her movements that reminded him, oddly, of Tsunade. She didn't flinch at his wounds, didn't offer empty platitudes. She just fixed things. Hours seemed to pass, though it was probably only one. She worked on his ribs, his cuts, the gash on his head. The humming device became a constant, low soundtrack to his pain. Finally, she stepped back, placing her hands on her hips and letting out a long sigh. "Well, you're not going to die. At least, not tonight." She tossed the healing device onto a nearby tray. "The cellular regeneration I mentioned earlier? It kicked in big time after I jump-started the bone knitting. Whatever you are, your body wants to live. I'll give it that." She pulled up a stool and sat down heavily, looking at him. For the first time, he got a good look at her. She was beautiful, in a sharp, intelligent way. Not soft like Hinata, or fierce like Sakura. She was direct. Her gaze was unwavering. "So," she said, breaking the silence that had settled between them, "want to tell me how you ended up in the middle of my testing grounds, looking like you went 10 rounds with a dinosaur and lost?" Naruto looked at the smooth, white ceiling. How could he explain? Chakra? Shinobi? A dimensional tear? It would sound like the ravings of a madman. "I don't know," he said finally, his voice still weak. "There was a light. And then, pain. And then you." Bulma raised an eyebrow. "A light. Right. And the clothes? She gestured vaguely at her own cheeks. "The marks?" Naruto's hand instinctively went to his face. "I was born with them," he said, a simple truth. It was easier than explaining Kurama. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. He could see the gears turning in her head, the scientist trying to find a logical explanation for an illogical situation. "Fine," she said, standing up. "Keep your secrets for now. The guest rooms are down the hall, 3rd door on the left. Get some rest. You look terrible." She paused at the door, her back to him. "And Naruto? Don't wander around. This place is full of things that could kill you if you don't know what you're doing." The door slid shut behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Naruto alone in the sterile silence. He lay on the table, the strange healing device's hum still ringing in his ears. He was in a world of capsules and floating vehicles and a woman who fixed broken bones with a ray gun. He was lost, injured, and utterly, completely alone. He closed his eye, and for the first time since he could remember, he felt the cold, unfamiliar weight of true isolation. This wasn't his world. And for the first time, he had no idea if he'd ever find his way home. 3 days. For 3 days, Naruto had been a ghost in Bulma's home. He stayed in the room she'd pointed him to, a clean, sparse space with a bed that was too soft, and a window that looked out onto a manicured lawn. He slept a lot, his body drawing on every reserve to heal. Kurama's chakra was slowly, painstakingly, beginning to circulate again, but it felt like trying to run through deep mud. The fox himself was quiet, a brooding presence at the back of Naruto's mind. Naruto could feel him observing, sensing the alien energies of this world, but he offered no explanations, only a low, constant hum of. On the second day, a small, spherical robot had glided into his room, carrying a tray of food. Naruto had nearly destroyed it with a reflexive kunai before he stopped himself. The robot, unfazed, simply set the tray down and glided out. The food was strange, fluffy, white balls of bread, some kind of grilled meat in a sweet sauce, and a glass of cold, fizzy water that burned his nose. He ate it all, his shinobi training dictating he take sustenance whenever it was offered. He saw Bulma in glimpses. She'd pass by his open door, a tablet in her hand, muttering to herself about energy signatures and dimensional anomalies. Once, she stopped and leaned against the doorframe, watching him as he sat on the bed, staring out the window. "Bored yet?" she asked. He turned to her. "A little," he admitted. "Good. Boredom is a luxury. Means you're healing." She tapped her tablet. "I ran an analysis on the residual energy from your clothes, your skin. It's unlike any key signature I've ever recorded. It's quieter, more internal. Like it's woven into your very cells." Naruto didn't know what ki was. He stayed silent. She waited for a response, then sighed. "Right. The strong, silent type. Fine. Just don't break anything." And she was gone. It was on the 4th day that he finally left the room. He wandered the halls, his bare feet silent on the cool, polished floor. The house was a labyrinth of technology. He passed rooms with massive computers humming on walls, a kitchen that looked more like a laboratory, and a living area with furniture so white and plush it seemed a crime to sit on it. He found a pair of large glass doors and stepped outside. The air was fresh and clean, carrying the scent of unfamiliar flowers. He stood on a wide patio, looking out over a vast, blue expanse of water. A lake. Or an ocean. He didn't know. The sheer scale of everything was disorienting. "You're up." He didn't flinch. He'd sensed her approach this time, the soft pad of her footsteps on the grass. He was getting better at distinguishing the nothingness that was her presence in this world of loud energy. Bulma walked up beside him, holding 2 cups. She handed one to him. It was a warm, amber liquid. Tea. It smelled floral. "Thanks," he said quietly, taking it. They stood in silence, looking out at the water. It was comfortable. Not the tense silence of a standoff, but the easy quiet of 2 people who didn't feel the need to fill the space with words. Naruto sipped the tea. It was good. "Vegeta's not happy," Bulma said suddenly, not looking at him. Naruto glanced at her. "Vegeta?" "My husband." She said the word flatly, without any particular warmth or coldness. It was just a fact. "He's a scion. An alien warrior. Very strong, very proud, very grumpy." She took a sip of her tea. "He sensed your arrival. Felt the, whatever it is you have. He thinks you're a threat, or a challenger. He wanted to come investigate you himself, which in his language means blast you into a crater. I told him to back off. That you were injured and harmless." Naruto wasn't sure if he should feel insulted or grateful. "I'm not harmless," he said, a flicker of his old self showing. Bulma finally looked at him, a small, wry smile on her lips. "I know. You've got the eyes of a fighter. But you're also smart enough to know when you're out of your depth. That's why you're still in one piece." She turned back to the lake. "He'll want to talk to you eventually. Size you up. Just don't rise to it. He's not a bad person. He's just a lot." Naruto thought of Sasuke. He understood a lot. That evening, he met their son. A young boy with spiky lavender hair and Bulma's blue eyes came barreling into the living room where Naruto was sitting, once again staring out a window. He was maybe 8 or 9. "Mom! I finished my training early. Can I go see?" He stopped dead when he saw Naruto. His eyes went wide. "Oh! You're the guy! The one Dad was talking about." Naruto offered a small smile. It felt strange on his face. "I'm Naruto." The boy grinned. "I'm Trunks. Are you really from another dimension? Mom said your energy is totally weird. Can you fight? Are you strong? Can you show me a cool move? The questions tumbled out so fast Naruto couldn't keep up. He found himself, despite his weariness, smiling a little wider. The boy's enthusiasm was a warm echo of a life he'd left behind. Trunks, give the man some space, Bulma called from the kitchen. He just got out of the med bay. Trunks ignored her, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Can you? Please? Naruto looked at his hands. They were still weak. His chakra reserves were a fraction of what they should be. But the boy's earnest face, he couldn't say no. He slowly stood up. He didn't use chakra. He just moved. One moment he was on the couch, the next he was crouched by the window, a flicker of motion. A simple shinobi body flicker, powered purely by physical strength. Trunks gasped, his jaw dropping. Whoa! How did you do that? There was no key. None at all. That's so cool. From the kitchen doorway, Bulma watched, a thoughtful look on her face. She saw the strain on Naruto's face after the simple movement, the way his hand subtly went to his still healing ribs. He'd pushed himself for her son. Naruto just gave Trunks a tired, genuine smile. It's just a trick. Maybe when I'm better I can show you a few more. The look of pure, unadulterated joy on Trunks' face was a balm on a wound Naruto didn't know he had. For the first time since arriving in this loud, bright, strange world, he didn't feel quite so alone. He saw Bulma watching him from the kitchen, and for a moment their eyes met. She didn't smile, but the sharp analytical line of her brow softened, just a fraction. It was a look he couldn't quite read. Approval, maybe? Or just understanding. Later that night, unable to sleep, Naruto wandered towards the low hum of machinery he'd come to associate with Bulma's lab. The door was partly open. He saw her inside, surrounded by floating holographic screens, her blue hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was muttering to herself, poking at a piece of machinery with a tool. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from long, focused work, not physical exertion. He almost turned away, not wanting to intrude. But she glanced up, saw his reflection in a screen, and sighed. Can't sleep either, huh? Come in. Just don't touch anything. He stepped inside. The lab was a chaotic wonderland of wires, glowing cores, and half-assembled gadgets. He stood by a clear space on a workbench, watching her. What are you working on? He asked. A gravity simulator, she said, not looking up. Vegeta broke the last one. Again. She let out a frustrated huff. He has no respect for precision engineering. He just cranks it up to 400 times Earth's gravity and punches things until it shorts out. Naruto tried to imagine 400 times the gravity he was used to. He couldn't. The concept was absurd. Why would he need that? To get stronger. It's a Scion thing. They live for it. Fight, eat, sleep, fight. It's exhausting. She finally put down her tool and rubbed her temples with her thumb and forefinger. A small gesture, but Naruto saw the weariness in it. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, a silent presence in the humming room. After a minute, she glanced at him. You're not going to ask a million questions? He shook his head. You look tired. I just didn't want to be alone. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her. She looked at him for a long moment, her blue eyes searching his. He met her gaze, not flinching. He saw something flicker in her expression. Not attraction, not yet. Just a recalibration. A reassessment. She was seeing him not as a patient, or a scientific curiosity, but as a person. Yeah, she said quietly, turning back to her work. I get that. They stayed like that for another hour. He sat on a stool, watching her work in silence. She'd occasionally mutter a curse or tap a screen. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with a nascent, unspoken understanding. Two people, both used to being surrounded by others, yet fundamentally alone in their own ways, finding a strange sort of comfort in each other's quiet company. He left without a word when he felt his eyes growing heavy, and she didn't say goodbye. But as he walked back to his room, he felt a little less like a ghost. Next. A week passed before Vegeta finally cornered him. Naruto had been outside, practicing basic katas. Nothing flashy. Just the fundamental stances and movements his body had known since childhood. His chakra was responding better now, flowing more freely, though it still felt sluggish compared to home. Kurama had been quiet, but Naruto could feel the fox's awareness sharpening, watching the horizon of this new world with ancient caution. He was midway through a simple taijutsu sequence when he felt it. Pressure. Not chakra. Something else. Something that pushed against his skin, his lungs, his very will to stand. It was like being submerged in deep water, but there was no water. Just the presence of someone behind him. Naruto didn't turn immediately. He finished the kata, slow and deliberate, before straightening and facing the intruder. Vegeta stood 20 feet away, arms crossed, feet planted wide. He was shorter than Naruto expected, but the energy radiating from him was anything but small. Black hair stood sharp against the sky. His eyes were dark, assessing, and utterly without warmth. "You're the one," Vegeta said. It wasn't a question. Naruto nodded slowly. "Naruto Uzumaki." "I don't care what you're called." Vegeta uncrossed his arms and took a step forward. The pressure intensified. "I care what you are. Bulma says you're injured. She says your energy is strange. She says I should leave you alone." "But you're not going to," Naruto said quietly. A thin smile crossed Vegeta's face. It wasn't friendly. "No. I'm not." They stood in the grass, the vast lake behind Naruto, the dome of Bulma's home behind Vegeta. Neither moved. Naruto could feel Kurama stir, a low rumble of warning. "Scion," the fox murmured. His blood hums with something ancient. Primal. "Be careful, Kit." Naruto kept his breathing steady. He'd faced worse odds. He'd faced gods. But this wasn't about fighting. This was about something else entirely. "You felt my arrival," Naruto said. "Bulma told me." "I felt something." Vegeta's eyes narrowed. "A rip in the fabric of this world. And then you. A creature with no key, yet not empty. You're a contradiction. I don't like contradictions I can't explain." "I don't have ki," Naruto admitted. "I have chakra. It's different." "Different." Vegeta spat the word like it offended him. "Show me." Naruto hesitated. His body wasn't ready for a fight. But he understood warriors. He understood pride. If he refused, Vegeta would see it as weakness, and weakness would invite worse than conversation. Slowly, Naruto raised his right hand. He gathered a small amount of chakra into his palm, just enough to form a pale blue glow, the beginnings of a Rasengan. The sphere flickered weakly, unstable, far from the roaring ball of destruction it could be. It spun for 3 seconds before dissolving with a soft hiss. Vegeta watched in silence. When the light faded, he tilted his head slightly. "That's not ki," he said. It wasn't a question. "No. It's weaker." Naruto felt the words like a small cut. He said nothing. Vegeta stared at him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He relaxed. Not much. Just a fraction. The pressure in the air lessened. "You're not lying about being injured," Vegeta said. "That display was pathetic. A child could muster more." Naruto's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'm healing." "Heal faster." Vegeta turned, as if the conversation was over. Then he stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. "When you're well enough to stand without looking like you'll collapse, come find me. I want to feel this chakra of yours when you're not half dead. If you're going to be under my roof, even temporarily, I'll know exactly what you're capable of." He launched into the sky without another word, a white contrail exploding behind him as he vanished into the clouds. Naruto stood alone in the grass, his palms still tingling from the failed Rasengan. He looked at his hand, then up at the empty sky. "He's not wrong," Kurama said quietly. "That was pathetic. Thanks for the support." "I'm not here to support your ego, Kit. I'm here to keep you alive. And that Scion could end you in a heartbeat right now. Respect that. Learn from it." Naruto lowered his hand and walked back inside. That evening, Bulma found him in the kitchen, staring at a cup of the fizzy water he still didn't understand. She poured herself something stronger from a bottle in the cabinet and sat across from him at the counter. "He found you," she said. It wasn't a question. Naruto nodded. "He didn't blast you into next week, so I'm guessing it went okay. He wants to train with me. When I'm better." Bulma snorted into her glass. "Train. Right. He wants to see if you're worth his time. If you are, he'll push you until you break. If you're not, he'll ignore you forever." She took a sip. "Honestly, the ignoring might be better." Naruto looked at her. "You don't want me here." It wasn't accusatory. Just a statement. He was used to being unwanted. Bulma set her glass down and met his eyes. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." A silence settled between them. Different from the lab silence. Rougher. Edged with something unspoken. Bulma ran a hand through her hair, tugging at the blue strands in frustration. "Look. I don't know you. You show up half dead in my backyard, wearing clothes that look like a nightmare designed them, carrying some kind of energy that even my best scanners can't fully read. My husband wants to fight you. My son thinks you're the most exciting thing since dinosaurs. And I'm stuck in the middle, trying to figure out if you're a threat, a guest, or a very complicated problem I didn't ask for. Naruto absorbed her words without flinching. He understood complicated problems. He'd been one his entire life. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't ask to be here. Bulma's expression flickered. The sharp edges softened, just slightly. I know, she said. That's the only reason you're still in that guest room. She finished her drink and stood. At the kitchen doorway, she paused. For what it's worth, she said without turning around. Trunks hasn't stopped talking about you. About the invisible move you showed him. He wanted to show his father, but Vegeta just grunted at him. She glanced back, a ghost of something almost like warmth in her eyes. Thanks for that. Trunks doesn't have enough people who take him seriously. She left before he could respond. Naruto sat alone in the kitchen, the strange fizzy water untouched, and felt something shift inside him. Not much. Just a crack in the wall of isolation he'd built since arriving. Bulma was sharp, direct, sometimes cold. But she wasn't cruel. And she just thanked him. It was a small thing. But in a world where everything was alien, small things mattered. 3 more weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mornings, Naruto trained alone, slowly rebuilding his strength. His chakra responded better each day, though it still moved through him like a language he was relearning. Kurama offered occasional observations, usually about the strange energy of this world, the way it pulsed with something the fox called divine echoes. Afternoons, Trunks found him. The boy was relentless, bright-eyed and hungry for anything Naruto could teach him. Naruto showed him basic shinobi stances, how to mask his presence, how to move without wasted motion. Trunks absorbed it all with frightening speed. You're a natural, Naruto told him one afternoon, after Trunks had successfully crept up on a bird in the yard. Trunks beamed. Really? Dad never has time to teach me stuff like this. He says I have to earn the basics through combat. Naruto crouched to the boy's level. Your dad's a warrior. Warriors think about fighting. But being a ninja, a shinobi, is different. Sometimes the best move is the one your enemy never sees coming. Trunks nodded solemnly, then ruined it with a huge grin. Can you teach me that thing with the glowing ball? Mom said you did it in your hand. Naruto laughed, his first real laugh since arriving. Not yet. That takes years. But maybe someday. Evenings, Naruto found himself gravitating toward the lab. It became habit. After dinner, after Trunks was in bed, after Vegeta had disappeared into his gravity chamber to punch the universe into submission, Naruto would wander to the lab doorway. Bulma would glance up, nod once, and he'd enter. They didn't talk much. That was the strange part. They just existed in the same space. He'd sit on his usual stool, watching her work on incomprehensible machines. She'd mutter, curse, tap screens, occasionally throw a tool across the room in frustration. He learned to fetch them without being asked. He learned which silences meant she was focused and which meant she was stuck. When she was stuck, he'd ask a simple question, nothing technical, just something to break the loop, and she'd answer, and somehow that would unstick whatever was broken in her mind. She never thanked him for it. But she stopped asking why he was there. One night, she was working on a small device, something that hummed with a soft blue light. Naruto watched her hands move, precise and sure despite hours of work. You're staring, she said without looking up. Sorry. He looked away. A pause. Then, I didn't say stop. I just noticed. He looked back. She was still focused on the device, but there was the smallest curve at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. Something softer. What is that? He asked, nodding at the device. Energy stabilizer. Vegeta's training sessions create massive key fluctuations. They interfere with satellite communications, weather patterns, sometimes the house's power grid. This dampens the bleed off. She held it up, examining her work. Boring, really? Just maintenance. Sounds important. It is. But it's not exciting. Not like fighting, or saving the world, or whatever you did in your dimension. Naruto considered that. I've done a lot of maintenance. Most people just don't see it. Bulma set the device down and looked at him fully. Really looked. He held her gaze. What kind of maintenance? She asked. He thought about the years of paperwork as Hokage. The diplomatic missions. The times he'd sat with grieving families, or mediated disputes between villages, or simply listened to someone who needed to be heard. The kind that doesn't make stories, he said. The kind that happens after the fighting stops. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition, maybe? Or surprise that he understood. I rebuilt a city once, she said quietly. After Piccolo, after a battle. West City was in ruins. Everyone expected me to just fix it. Because I'm Bulma Briefs, I can do anything. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I didn't sleep for 3 months. I just worked. And when it was done, everyone moved on. No one asked how I was. They just needed the next thing fixed. Naruto didn't offer sympathy. He knew better. He just nodded. I get that, he said. And somehow, that was enough. They sat in silence for a long time after that. The lab hummed around them. The night pressed against the windows. Two people who understood the weight of being needed, and the loneliness of never being asked how they carried it. When Naruto finally stood to leave, Bulma spoke without looking up. Same time tomorrow? He paused at the door. Yeah. He walked to his room through the dark, quiet halls, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like a stranger in someone else's house. The argument happened 3 days later. Naruto heard it from across the house, raised voices, sharp and cutting. He'd learned to recognize the rhythms of conflict in this home. Vegeta's voice was a low, controlled growl. Bulma's was higher, faster, laced with frustration. He stayed in his room. It wasn't his business. But the voices grew louder, moving through the house. He caught fragments through the walls. Don't care what your instinct says, Vegeta, he's not a threat. He carries power he doesn't understand. Power that ripped into this world. You're blind if you think that's coincidence. I think you're paranoid. I think you see a challenge everywhere because that's all you know how to see. A crash. Something breaking. I see what's there, woman. You see what you want to see. A stray dog to fix. A project. He's not a project. He's a person, you arrogant. And what happens when whatever follows him arrives? When whatever tore that hole comes through? Will your feelings protect Trunks? Silence. Naruto stood by his door, hand on the frame. He shouldn't interfere. This was their marriage, their history, their fight. But he heard something in the silence that made his chest tighten. Not anger. Fear. Vegeta was afraid. Not of Naruto, of the unknown. Of failing to protect his family. And Bulma was afraid too. Of being wrong. Of trusting the wrong person. He opened the door and walked toward the voices. They were in the living room. Vegeta stood rigid by the window, back turned. Bulma faced him, arms wrapped around herself, her face pale with a mixture of anger and something rawer. A broken vase lay at her feet. They both turned when Naruto entered. This doesn't concern you, Vegeta said flatly. You're arguing about me, Naruto said. That makes it my concern. Bulma opened her mouth, but Naruto held up a hand, a gentle gesture, not demanding. She closed it. Naruto looked at Vegeta's back. You're right to be cautious. I would be too in your place. A stranger appears in your world, carrying power you don't understand, near your family. He paused. I've been that stranger. I've been the threat people feared before they knew me. Vegeta didn't turn. But I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to challenge you, or take anything from you, or bring danger to your door. Naruto's voice was quiet, steady. I'm here because something I don't understand pulled me here. And until I figure out how to get home, I'm just trying to heal and stay out of the way. Silence. Bulma watched him, her expression unreadable. Vegeta finally turned. His eyes were hard, searching. Naruto met them without flinching. You expect me to believe that? Vegeta asked. I don't expect anything, Naruto said. I'm just telling you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. Another long moment. Then Vegeta did something unexpected. He laughed. Not warmly, a short, sharp sound. You've got spine. I'll give you that. He walked toward the hallway, pausing beside Naruto. When you're healed, we train. If you're lying about any of this, I'll know. And I won't ask questions first. He disappeared down the hall. The silence he left behind was heavy. Bulma hadn't moved. Her arms were still wrapped around herself, but her face had softened from anger into something more vulnerable. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. I know. He would have cooled down eventually. He always does. I know. She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw the exhaustion beneath her sharpness. The weight of years of this, of loving someone who saw the world through battle, of holding a family together when one member was always looking for the next fight. You're not a project, she said suddenly. What he said? You're not. Naruto almost smiled. I know that too. She nodded once, then bent to pick up the broken vase. He moved to help, and they collected the pieces in silence. Their hands brushed once, briefly. Neither acknowledged it. When the pieces were gathered, she stood, holding them carefully. I'm sorry you heard that, she said. We're not usually. I mean, we fight, but not like. She stopped, frustrated with herself. It's okay, Naruto said. I've heard worse. Said worse, probably. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Somehow I doubt that. She turned toward the kitchen, then paused. Naruto? Yeah? Same time tonight? In the lab? It was the first time she'd asked like that. Like it mattered whether he came. Yeah, he said. Same time. She disappeared into the kitchen, and Naruto stood alone in the living room, looking at the spot where the vase had broken. Something had shifted. He couldn't name it. But the air felt different. Lighter. Or maybe just more real. That night in the lab, they didn't work in silence. Bulma talked. Not about anything important, complaints about a supplier, a story about something Trunks had done, a rant about Vegeta's complete lack of mechanical sympathy. But she talked, and Naruto listened, and sometimes he asked questions, and sometimes he just nodded. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even friendship, not yet. It was something more basic. Two people choosing to be in the same space, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And for both of them, after years of being needed rather than chosen, that small thing felt almost revolutionary. Next. The first time Naruto saw Bulma cry, it was over something small. He'd been in the lab for over an hour, watching her work on a prototype for a new kind of energy conduit. She'd been distracted all evening, sharper than usual, quicker to curse, her movements jerky instead of fluid. He'd learned to read her well enough to know something was wrong, but he also knew better than to ask. She'd talk when she was ready. Or she wouldn't. That was her choice. She was soldering two impossibly small wires when her hand slipped. The tool skidded across the workbench, leaving a black scorch mark on the pristine surface. She stared at it for a moment, then hurled the tool across the room. It bounced off a cabinet and clattered to the floor. Naruto didn't move. Bulma stood with her back to him, shoulders rigid. He watched the tension in her spine, the way her hands gripped the edge of the workbench. The silence stretched. Then she made a sound. Not loud. Just a small, broken exhale that might have been nothing. But her shoulders shook. Naruto had seen people cry before. He'd held crying children, crying comrades, crying strangers. He'd learned that words were useless in that moment. Presence mattered. Just being there, solid and quiet, letting the person know they weren't alone. He didn't approach. He didn't speak. He just stayed on his stool, watching the back of her head, ready to leave if she wanted him to, ready to stay if she didn't. Minutes passed. The shaking subsided. She reached up and wiped her face with the back of her hand, still not turning around. It's my mother, she said finally. Her voice was rough, scraped raw. She's been sick for a while. I thought the treatments were working. But the doctor called today. They're not. Naruto waited. She turned then, and he saw what she tried to hide. Red-rimmed eyes, tear tracks on her cheeks, the kind of exhaustion that had nothing to do with sleep. She looked smaller somehow. Younger. Like the sharp, brilliant woman who ran a global corporation and built impossible machines had been replaced by someone fragile. I'm supposed to fix things, she said. That's what I do. That's who I am. If something's broken, I figure out how to make it work again. Her voice cracked. But I can't fix this. I can't build a machine that stops time. I can't invent something that makes cells stop forgetting how to divide. I can't. She stopped, pressing her palm against her mouth. Naruto slid off his stool. He didn't think about it. He just moved. He walked to her workbench and stood on the other side, close but not too close. He didn't reach for her. He just stood there, letting her see him, letting her choose. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I don't know what that feels like. Losing someone. I never had parents to lose. She looked at him, surprised. But I know what it feels like to watch someone you care about hurt, and not be able to stop it. He thought of Sakura, bending over Sasuke's broken body after their final battle. Of Hinata, holding his hand as he lay dying after extracting Kurama. Of all the times he'd stood helpless while people he loved paid the price for his failures. It's its own kind of pain. Different from dying. Longer. Bulma stared at him for a long moment. Then she let out a shaky breath and laughed, a wet, broken sound. God, I'm a mess, she whispered. Yeah, Naruto said. That's okay. She looked at him like he'd said something profound, though to him it was just the truth. He'd been a mess most of his life. He knew the territory. I should go see her, Bulma said. Tomorrow. I keep putting it off because I don't want to. I don't want to see her like that. But that's selfish. Is it? She blinked. Wanting to remember someone the way they were, he said slowly, working through the thought as he spoke. That's not selfish. That's love. But wanting to be with them anyway, even when it's hard, that's also love. They're both true. Bulma wiped her eyes again, but this time the movement was different. Deliberate. She was pulling herself back together. When did you get so wise? She asked. It wasn't mocking. Just curious. Naruto shrugged. I had a lot of time to think. After the war. Before I became Hokage. He paused. And I had good teachers. People who sat with me when I was the one falling apart. She nodded slowly. Then, without warning, she reached across the workbench and squeezed his hand. Just for a second. Just enough to feel. Thank you, she said. He nodded. Same time tomorrow? A real smile this time. Small, tired, but real. Same time tomorrow. The next evening, Naruto was alone in the lab when Vegeta found him. He'd come anyway, even though Bulma was at the hospital with her mother. It felt strange to be in the house without her. The silence was different, emptier. The lab was the only place that felt right. He wasn't touching anything. Just sitting on his stool, looking at the organized chaos of her workspace. You're still here. Naruto looked up. Vegeta stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She's not, Naruto said. I know. They regarded each other. The hum of machinery filled the space between them. She told you, Vegeta said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Vegeta was silent for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he walked into the lab. Not toward Naruto, toward a corner of the room where a small shelf held various odds and ends. He picked up a photograph in a simple frame and looked at it. Naruto saw it was a picture of an older woman with Bulma's smile and the same sharp blue eyes. Bulma's mother. Briefs, Vegeta said quietly. She's always been kind to me. Even when I gave her no reason to be. He set the photograph down carefully. I don't know how to do this. The waiting. The watching. Give me an enemy to fight, and I understand. This, he gestured vaguely. This is her world. Not mine. Naruto understood. He'd felt the same way watching Sakura grieve for Sasuke, watching Hinata struggle with her clan's expectations. Helplessness was its own kind of enemy. You don't have to do anything, Naruto said. Just being here. That's enough. Vegeta looked at him sharply. I'm not good at just being. Neither am I. Naruto almost smiled. But I'm learning. Another long silence. Then Vegeta did something unexpected. He sat down. On a stool near the door, stiff and uncomfortable, like he'd never done it before. Which he probably hadn't. Not in here. I don't trust you, Vegeta said. I know. Your power is still unknown. Your intentions are unknown. Everything about you is a question mark. Naruto nodded. I know. But Bulma trusts you. For now. Vegeta's eyes were hard. That means I tolerate you. But if you hurt her, if any of this ends with her in pain because of you, I will end you. Not quickly. Not cleanly. Do you understand? Naruto met his gaze without flinching. I understand. And for what it's worth, I'd do the same. If someone I loved was in danger. Vegeta stared at him for a long moment. Then he gave a short, sharp nod. They sat in silence after that. Two warriors, in a lab full of machines neither fully understood, waiting for a woman who held them both together in different ways. When Bulma finally came home, hours later, she found them like that. She stopped in the doorway, took in the scene, her husband on a stool near the door, Naruto on his usual perch, both silent, both clearly uncomfortable, both there. She didn't cry. But something in her face shifted. Softened. Vegeta, she said quietly. He stood immediately. How is she? Resting. Comfortable. She walked to him and, surprising them both, leaned her head against his chest for just a moment. Vegeta's arms came up automatically, awkwardly, holding her. Over her head, His eyes met Naruto's. There was no hostility there now. Just understanding. They were both in this. Whatever this was. Bulma pulled back after a moment and looked at Naruto. You didn't have to stay. I know. She nodded. Then, for the second time, she did something unexpected. She crossed the room and hugged him. Quick, firm, over before he could react. But real. When she stepped back, her eyes were dry but bright. Both of you, she said, looking between them. Idiots. The both of you. Vegeta grunted. Naruto almost smiled. I'm going to bed, Bulma announced. I'm exhausted. Try not to kill each other. She left. The lab felt emptier without her. Vegeta looked at Naruto one last time. Tomorrow. Training. You're healed enough. It wasn't a question. Naruto nodded. Tomorrow. Vegeta left without another word, and Naruto sat alone in the humming lab, thinking about the strange shapes love could take. Vegeta's silent vigil. Bulma's stubborn strength. His own awkward presence, neither warrior nor husband nor anything easily named. He didn't know what he was doing here. Didn't know if he'd ever get home. Didn't know what was growing between him and Bulma, friendship, or something deeper, or just the bond of two people who'd seen each other raw. But for the first time since arriving, that uncertainty didn't feel like a weight. It just felt like living. The training with Vegeta happened at dawn. Naruto met him in the clearing where he'd first been confronted. The grass was wet with dew. The lake was glass smooth. Vegeta stood waiting, arms crossed, expression impatient. You're slow, Vegeta said by way of greeting. I'm here. Barely. Vegeta uncrossed his arms. Today, we see what you're made of. No holding back. No excuses. Show me this chakra of yours at full strength. Naruto took a breath and centered himself. His body was healed. His chakra flowed properly now, though it still felt different, muted by the alien atmosphere, or maybe just acclimating. He reached for Kurama's power, and felt the fox respond. Don't hold back, Kit. Let him see what we are. Naruto nodded. Then he let go. The transformation into Sage mode was familiar, the orange pigmentation around his eyes, the vertical pupils, the heightened awareness of everything around him. Nature energy flooded through him, but it felt wrong. Thinner. Like trying to breathe at high altitude. Vegeta's eyes narrowed. Different. But still not Ki. Naruto didn't answer. He moved. His first punch was fast, faster than he'd been able to move since arriving. Vegeta blocked it easily, but his eyes widened slightly. He'd felt the force behind it. Better, Vegeta admitted. But not enough. The next hour was brutal. Vegeta didn't hold back. Not fully. Naruto could tell he was restraining himself, pulling punches that would have shattered mountains. But even restrained, Scion's strength was overwhelming. Naruto was thrown, punched, kicked, slammed into the ground more times than he could count. He got up every time. His chakra responded differently here. Techniques that should have worked fizzled. Shadow clones popped after a single hit instead of lasting. The Rasengan was slower to form, less stable. But Sage mode helped. The enhanced senses let him anticipate Vegeta's movements, even if he couldn't match his speed. He dodged more than he blocked, conserved energy, looked for openings. By the end, he was bleeding from a dozen small cuts, his clothes torn, his body screaming. But he was still standing. Vegeta stood across from him, barely winded. He studied Naruto with an expression that might have been respect. You adapt quickly, Vegeta said. Your body learns. That's valuable. He paused. Your power is strange. Weaker than Ki in pure force, but more flexible. More internal. It's like you're drawing from something alive. I am, Naruto said, gasping. Kurama. The Ninetales. He's part of me. Vegeta's eyebrows rose. A beast inside you? Sharing power? It's complicated. Most useful things are. Vegeta turned away. We train again tomorrow. Same time. Don't be late. He launched into the sky, leaving Naruto collapsed in the grass, staring at the clouds. That evening, Naruto sat on the patio overlooking the lake, nursing bruises and a shallow cut on his forearm. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. Bulma found him there. She sat in the chair beside him, holding 2 glasses of something cold. She handed him one. Vegeta said you lasted an hour? That's longer than most. He was holding back. Obviously. If he wasn't, you'd be a crater. She took a sip. But still. He doesn't train with just anyone. He must see something in you. Naruto didn't answer. He was watching the sunset, feeling the ache in his bones, thinking about nothing and everything. They sat in silence for a while. Comfortable silence. The kind that didn't need filling. How's your mother? Naruto asked finally. Bulma's expression flickered. Stable. For now. The doctors say weeks, maybe months. Not years. She said it flatly, like she was reading a weather report. But he heard the grief underneath. I'm sorry. Me too. She took a longer drink. She asked about you. Naruto looked at her, surprised. Me? Mom's always been curious. I told her about the strange man who fell out of the sky, and she wanted to know everything. What you looked like. How you talked. Whether you were kind. Bulma smiled faintly. She always asks that last one. About everyone I mention. Is he kind, Bulma? Like that's the only thing that matters. What did you tell her? Bulma considered. I said you were quiet. That you watched more than you spoke. That you sat with me in the lab when you didn't have to, and that you let my son talk your ear off without ever looking bored. She paused. I said I thought you were kind. Even if you didn't know it yourself. Naruto looked away, embarrassed. Compliments had never sat easily on him. They felt like wearing someone else's clothes. She wants to meet you, Bulma said. If you're willing. I know it's a lot to ask, a hospital, a stranger, all of it. But I'll go. She looked at him. You don't have to. I know. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once and looked back at the sunset. Thank you, she said quietly. They sat until the stars came out. Not talking. Just present. The lake lapped at the shore. The house hummed behind them. Somewhere inside, Vegeta was probably punching something, and Trunks was probably dreaming of dinosaurs and invisible moves. It felt like peace. Or as close to it as either of them got. The hospital was white and sterile and too bright. Naruto hated it immediately. It reminded him of the medical bays in Konoha, the ones where he'd watched comrades fight for life. But he followed Bulma through the corridors without comment, letting her lead. Bulma's mother was in a private room, propped up on pillows. She was thin, thinner than in the photograph, but her eyes were sharp and blue and unmistakably Bulma's. So you're the mysterious stranger, she said when they entered. Her voice was weak but warm. Bulma's been talking about you nonstop. Come here, let me look at you. Naruto approached the bed, suddenly awkward. He didn't know how to do this. Civilian interactions had always been harder than battles. Mrs. Brief studied him with open curiosity. The marks on your cheeks. Are they real? Yes, ma'am. Fascinating. And your eyes so blue. Like the sky before a storm. She smiled. Bulma said you were kind? She was right. I can see it. Naruto didn't know what to say to that. He glanced at Bulma, who was watching with an expression he couldn't read. Sit down, young man. Tell me about yourself. Mrs. Briefs gestured to a chair. I want to know everything about the person who's been keeping my daughter company when she should be sleeping. Naruto sat. And, haltingly, he talked. He told her about Konoha, describing it as a walled city, without mentioning shinobi. He told her about his friends, about becoming a leader, about the war they'd fought. He left out the darkest parts, the losses, the sacrifices, the weight of being a Jinchuriki. But he told enough. Mrs. Briefs listened with complete attention, asking occasional questions. Bulma stayed by the door, watching them both. When Naruto finally ran out of words, Mrs. Briefs reached out and patted his hand. Her skin was papery, fragile. You're a good man, she said simply. Take care of my daughter. She pretends she doesn't need it, but she does. We all do. Naruto glanced at Bulma again. She was looking at the floor, her expression hidden. I'll try, he said. On the way back to the house, Bulma was quiet. They drove in one of her hovercars, a sleek, silent vehicle that floated above the ground. Naruto watched the landscape scroll by, giving her space. She liked you, Bulma said finally. I knew she would. She's nice. She's dying. The words were blunt, hard. And she spent an hour talking to a complete stranger like he was the most interesting person in the world. Because that's who she is. She finds light everywhere. Naruto didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They drove the rest of the way in silence. But when they parked and walked toward the house, Bulma's hand brushed against his. Just once. Brief. Accidental, maybe? Either of them mentioned it. But that night, lying in his too soft bed, Naruto thought about the weight of her hand, the warmth of her mother's smile, the way Bulma had looked at him in the hospital room. Not like a stranger. Not like a patient. Not like a project. Like someone she trusted. He didn't know what that meant. Didn't know where it was going. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the need to run from it. He just let it be. And somehow, that was enough. Next. The funeral was small. Mrs. Briefs had requested it that way, no pomp, no crowds, just family and a few close friends. Naruto stood at the back of the small gathering, feeling like an intruder. He hadn't known her long. One conversation in a hospital room. But Bulma had asked him to come, and he couldn't say no. Bulma stood at the front, between Vegeta and Trunks. Her father was on her other side, looking lost in a way that age couldn't protect against. Trunks held his mother's hand tightly, his young face set in an expression of confused grief. Vegeta was motionless, a statue in formal clothes. But Naruto saw the way his hand rested on Bulma's lower back, a small, steady pressure. Support without words. Naruto watched from a distance, feeling the weight of his own displacement. He'd been to too many funerals. Too many graves. But this grief wasn't his to carry. He was just a witness. Afterward, at the Briefs' home, people milled about with food and quiet voices. The mansion felt different, subdued, the usual hum of activity replaced by something heavier. Bulma moved through the crowd like a ghost, accepting condolences, nodding mechanically. Naruto saw the mask she wore. He'd worn it himself, too many times. He found a spot on the patio, away from the others, looking out at the lake. The same view where they'd sat so many evenings. It felt different now. Everything did. Minutes passed. Or an hour. He didn't check. Footsteps behind him. He knew them without turning. "You're hiding," Bulma said. "Same as you." She came to stand beside him, close but not touching. She changed out of her funeral clothes into something simpler, a sweater, loose pants. Her hair was down, slightly tangled. She looked exhausted. "I keep expecting her to call," Bulma said quietly. "She'd call every Sunday morning, without fail. Complain about Dad's cooking, ask about Trunks, tell me I was working too hard." A pause. "I hated those calls sometimes. They interrupted everything. I'd rush her off the phone, promise to call back, never do." Her voice cracked. "And now I'd give anything for one more. One more complaint about Dad's soup." Naruto didn't offer platitudes. He knew better. "When I was a kid," he said slowly, "I used to imagine what my parents would sound like. What they'd say. I'd make up conversations in my head, arguments, advice, stupid jokes. Things I'd never get to hear." Bulma looked at him. "It's not the same," he continued. "Not really. But I know what it's like to want a voice that's gone. To reach for it and find nothing." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Not happily, a short, broken sound. "God," she said. "Even at a time like this, you find a way to make me feel less alone." "That's not—" "I know." She touched his arm briefly. "I know. That's just who you are. You can't help it." They stood in silence, watching the water. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for the day. "Stay," Bulma said suddenly. "Tonight." "I don't mean—" She stopped, frustrated. "I just don't want to be alone. And Vegeta's terrible at this. He tries, but he doesn't know how to just be here. He needs a fight, an enemy, something to punch. And Trunks is asleep and Dad's lost in his own grief and I—" She stopped again, pressing her hand to her mouth. Naruto nodded. "I'll stay." She looked at him, and for a moment the mask slipped completely. She was just a woman who'd lost her mother, standing in the twilight, holding herself together with willpower and habit. "Thank you," she whispered. They didn't go inside. They sat on the patio furniture, watching the stars emerge. Bulma talked sometimes, stories about her mother, memories that spilled out like water from a cracked vessel. Naruto listened. That was all. Just listened. When she finally fell silent, hours later, she was leaning against him. Not deliberately, just exhaustion, her head resting against his shoulder. He didn't move. Didn't breathe differently. Just let her be there. The night deepened. The lake lapped at the shore. Somewhere inside, a clock chimed midnight. Bulma stirred. Lifted her head. Looked at him in the darkness. "I should go in," she said quietly. "Yeah." Neither moved. Then, slowly, as if giving herself time to stop, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Just a brush of lips against skin. Brief. Warm. Good night, Naruto. She stood and walked inside, leaving him alone on the patio, the ghost of her kiss still present on his cheek. He sat there for a long time after she'd gone, not thinking, just feeling. The weight of the day. The warmth of her proximity. The impossible complexity of being here, now, in this moment that belonged to either of their worlds. When he finally went to his room, he didn't sleep. He just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and let himself feel everything he'd been avoiding for weeks. The weeks after the funeral settled into something new. Bulma threw herself into work, the only language she had for grief. She spent longer hours in the lab, emerging only for brief meals and shorter conversations. Naruto gave her space, but he also kept showing up. Every evening, same stool, same silence. She never asked him to leave. Sometimes she talked. Sometimes she didn't. He learned to read which was needed. Vegeta trained him harder. The sessions became brutal, pushing Naruto beyond anything he'd experienced. His body adapted slowly, chakra and physical strength growing in tandem. Kurama's voice was more present now, offering tactical observations during fights. "He's testing you," the fox said one morning, after Vegeta had left him gasping in a crater. "But not just your strength. Your will. Your patience. He's deciding if you're worthy of something." Worthy of what? That's for him to know. But watch him. He's more than he shows. Naruto watched. He saw the way Vegeta looked at Bulma when she wasn't paying attention, a complicated expression that mixed pride, frustration, and something softer. He saw the patience Vegeta had with Trunks, hidden beneath gruff words and training demands. He saw a man who'd built a life from nothing but pride and battle, and was still learning how to hold it. One evening, after a particularly brutal session, Vegeta spoke without preamble. "You care about her." Naruto, still catching his breath, looked up sharply. They were alone in the clearing. The sun was setting. "Bulma," Vegeta clarified. "You care about her." It wasn't a question. Naruto considered lying. It would be easier. Safer. But something in Vegeta's gaze stopped him, not hostility, but something rawer. Honesty, maybe? Or the demand for it. "Yes," he said quietly. Vegeta nodded slowly. "I've watched you. You don't push. You don't take. You just are. Like gravity. Steady." He crossed his arms. "I don't understand it. But I see it." Naruto waited. There was more coming. "She's not mine to protect anymore," Vegeta said. The words were hard, forced out like something painful. "Not in the way you think. We have history. We have a son. But what she needs now..." He stopped, jaw tight. "I'm not what she needs. Not for this." Naruto didn't know what to say. He'd never heard Vegeta speak like this. Vulnerable. Uncertain. "I'm not," Naruto started. "I know what you're not," Vegeta cut him off. "You're not me. You're not a scion. You're not a warrior in the way I understand. But you're something else." He met Naruto's eyes. "You're kind. Genuinely kind. Not because it's strategic, not because you want something. Because you don't know how to be anything else." The words hung between them. "If you hurt her," Vegeta said finally, "I'll kill you. That hasn't changed. But if you're what she needs..." He trailed off, then turned away. "Don't make me say more. I've said too much already." He launched into the sky, leaving Naruto alone with the weight of his words. That night in the lab, everything felt different. Bulma was working on something, a new project, some kind of energy dampener. Naruto sat on his stool, watching her hands move. The silence was comfortable, but charged. Like the air before a storm. "You're quiet tonight," Bulma said without looking up. "You too." She set down her tool and turned to face him. Really face him. Her blue eyes were tired but focused. "Vegeta talked to you after training?" It wasn't a question. Naruto nodded. "He does that sometimes. Says things he can't say to me." She smiled faintly. "Uses you as a messenger, I think. Without meaning to. He cares about you." "I know." She paused. "He's not good at showing it. But he does. In his way." Naruto nodded again. He understood complicated love. He'd grown up surrounded by it. Bulma studied him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled up another stool and sat close to him, closer than usual. Close enough that their knees almost touched. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Okay." That night, after the funeral, I kissed you. She held his gaze. You never mentioned it. Naruto felt his face warm slightly. You were grieving. I didn't want to. I know what you didn't want to. Her voice was gentle but firm. But I'm asking now. Not then. Now. He looked at her. Really looked. Saw the intelligence, the grief, the strength, the loneliness. Saw all the things she hid behind sharp words and brilliant inventions. I don't know what I'm doing here, he admitted. I don't know if I'm going home. I don't know if I can go home. And I don't know what any of this means. He gestured vaguely between them. But I know I keep coming back here. To this room. To you. Even when I shouldn't. Even when it's complicated. Bulma was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Just held it. Simple. Warm. It's complicated for me too, she said quietly. I have a husband. A son. A life that doesn't make sense to most people. And now there's you, this quiet, kind man from another world who sits in my lab and watches me work and never asks for anything. She squeezed his hand. I don't know what this is either. But I know I don't want you to stop coming. They sat like that, hands intertwined, in the humming silence of the lab. No declarations. No promises. Just presence. After a long time, Naruto spoke. I'll keep coming. Bulma smiled, a real smile, tired but real. Good. She didn't let go of his hand. And he didn't let go of hers. Outside, the night deepened. The house settled into sleep. And in the lab, two people from different worlds held onto each other in the only way they could, quietly, carefully, without knowing what came next. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Next. The disturbance came without warning. Naruto felt it first, a ripple through his chakra, like someone had dropped a stone into still water. Kurama surged forward in his mind, alert and dangerous. Something's coming. Naruto was on his feet before he consciously decided to move. He'd been in the backyard, mid-kata, the morning sun warm on his skin. Now the air felt wrong. Pressurized. Like the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. Across the property, he heard Vegeta shout. Then the sky cracked. A fissure opened above the lake, a jagged wound in reality itself, bleeding purple light. It was like the tear that had brought him here, but larger. More violent. And it was growing. Naruto! Bulma's voice. He turned to see her running from the house, trunks behind her, her face pale with fear. Not for herself. For her son. For her home. Get inside! He shouted, already moving toward the fissure. Get them to shelter! Vegeta landed beside him in an explosion of displaced air, his expression murderous. You brought this. It wasn't a question. I don't know. Save it. Vegeta's eyes were fixed on the tear. Whatever's coming, we stop it. Now. The fissure pulsed. And then something emerged. Not a creature. Not a person. Just pressure, ancient, vast, and utterly indifferent. It rolled over them like a wave, and Naruto felt his knees buckle. Kurama roared in his mind, for bristling against a presence the fox recognized on a level beyond conscious thought. Gods, Kurama whispered. Not gods. Something older. Something that predates gods. A figure stepped through the fissure. Tall. Impossibly thin. Purple skin and white hair arranged in towering spires. Eyes that held the cold light of distant stars. He carried a staff and wore an expression of mild curiosity, as if he'd stumbled upon an interesting insect. Behind him, a smaller figure, no less terrifying in his own way, floated with arms crossed. Purple, cat-like, with ancient eyes that missed nothing. Whis and Beerus. The angel and the god of destruction. Vegeta's stance shifted immediately, from aggressive readiness to something else. Respect. Fear. Naruto had never seen him look like that. Lord Beerus, Vegeta said, his voice tight. Lord Whis. Beerus ignored him completely. His eyes were fixed on Naruto. So, the god said, his voice a lazy drawl. You're the one who tore through my universe. Naruto couldn't speak. The pressure of Beerus's attention was like nothing he'd ever felt, worse than Madara, worse than Kagaya, worse than any enemy he'd faced. This wasn't power he could fight. This was power that could unmake him by accident. I felt the disturbance months ago. Beerus continued, drifting closer. Ignored it. Annoyances happen. But then it stayed. A persistent little tear, leaking foreign energy into my domain. He tilted his head. That I couldn't ignore. Wiz floated beside him, his expression pleasant but his eyes sharp. The energy signature is quite unique. Not ki. Something else entirely. He looked at Naruto with genuine curiosity. Fascinating, really? Where do you come from, young man? Naruto forced himself to speak. Another world. Another dimension. I don't know how I got here. No, Beerus said. You don't. But whatever brought you is still active. Still connected. He gestured lazily at the fissure, which pulsed in response. That tear leads somewhere. Not here. Not there. Somewhere in between. And it's getting wider. Bulma's voice cut through the tension. Can you close it? Everyone turned. She'd stepped out of the house, trunks hidden behind her, her face set in determined lines. She was terrified, Naruto could see it in the tightness around her eyes. But she stood her ground. Beerus looked at her like she was a particularly bold ant. Close it? Perhaps. Why would I? Because it's threatening my home. My family. She didn't flinch. And because if you can, that means you have the power to. The question is whether you have the decency. Wiz chuckled softly. Beerus's eyes narrowed. Decency, he repeated. A mortal lectures me on decency. I'm not lecturing. I'm asking. Bulma's voice was steady, but Naruto saw her hands shaking. Please. Close it. Before it gets worse. A long, terrible silence. Then Beerus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Entertaining, he said. Fine. I'll close it. But not for you. His gaze returned to Naruto. For him. The foreign element. I want to understand what he is, and why his presence is disrupting my universe. Wiz? Wiz floated forward, his staff glowing softly. Of course, Lord Beerus. But closing it permanently will require more than just my power. The tear is tied to him now. To his energy. If we seal it without addressing the connection, it will simply reopen elsewhere. Naruto felt Kurama stir. He's right. I can feel it. That tear is an echo of our arrival. As long as we're here, it exists. What do we need to do? Naruto asked. Wiz studied him with those ancient, knowing eyes. You'll need to sever the connection. Permanently. That means understanding exactly how you arrived, and creating a counter-resonance that closes the dimensional door behind you. He paused. It may also mean you cannot return the way you came. Once severed, that path is gone forever. The words landed like stones. Forever. If he closed the door, he might never go home. Bulma made a small sound, barely audible. Naruto didn't look at her. He couldn't. Not yet. How long? He asked. To figure it out? Wiz considered. With the brilliant Dr. Briefs' assistance? He smiled at Bulma. I've heard of your work. Impressive for a mortal. Perhaps a few weeks. Perhaps less. The data is complex, but not incomprehensible. Beerus yawned. Fine. A few weeks. I'll be elsewhere. He looked at Naruto one last time. Don't waste my angel's time. And don't make me come back for a reason less pleasant than curiosity. He vanished. Just gone. The pressure in the air eased immediately. Wiz remained, floating serenely. Well, he said. Shall we begin? The next weeks were a blur of analysis and exhaustion. Wiz worked alongside Bulma in the lab, his ancient knowledge complementing her brilliant mind. They mapped the dimensional tear, traced its connections, modeled the energy signatures. Naruto sat for hours while scanners read his chakra, his cells, his very existence. Kurama was restless. The fox didn't trust Wiz, didn't trust any being with that much power and that little apparent concern for mortal life. But he also recognized the necessity. He's right about one thing, Kurama said one night, after another long session. That path is dying. I can feel it. If we don't sever it cleanly, it will collapse on its own. And if we're connected when it does. What? A long pause. I don't know. Nothing good. Naruto sat with that knowledge. He'd been avoiding the question for months, whether he could go home, whether he wanted to, what it would mean if he couldn't. Now the answer was being forced on him. One evening, he found Bulma alone on the patio. The same spot where they'd sat so many times. She was staring at the lake, a glass of wine untouched beside her. He sat without asking. She didn't acknowledge him for a long moment. Wiz says another week, she said finally. Maybe less. He's impressed with my work. A hollow laugh. An angel is impressed with me. Should I be flattered? Naruto didn't answer. You'll have to decide, she said. Whether to sever it. Whether to stay. I know. She turned to look at him then, and he saw everything in her eyes: the grief she was still carrying for her mother, the fear for her son, the confusion of feeling something for a man who wasn't her husband, and beneath it all, a terrible, quiet hope. What do you want? She asked. It was the simplest question. The hardest question. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me wants to go home. I have people there. Responsibilities. A life I built. He paused. Part of me wants to stay. Because of you. He said it simply. Honestly. Because of Trunks. Because of Vegeta even. Because this place, this impossible, loud, strange place, has become something I don't want to leave. Bulma looked away. When she spoke, her voice was rough. I'm married, Naruto. I have a son. A complicated history with a man who's trying, in his own way, to be better. She gripped her wine glass tightly. I can't offer you anything simple. I can't offer you a future that makes sense. I don't even know what I'm feeling, half the time, except that when you're in the lab with me, the silence feels less empty. And when you're not there, I notice. Naruto reached out and took the wine glass from her hands, setting it aside. Then he took her hands. I'm not asking for simple, he said. I've never had simple. I don't know what I'm feeling either. But I know I keep coming back. I know that when I think about never seeing you again, it feels like losing something I didn't know I had. They sat like that, hands intertwined, the lake dark before them. What if I stay? Naruto said slowly. And it's terrible? What if whatever this is falls apart, and I'm stuck here, and you're stuck with me, and we both regret it? What if you go? Bulma countered. And we spend the rest of our lives wondering? It was the most honest either of them had been. I don't know the answer, Naruto said. Neither do I. She squeezed his hands. But I know I don't want you to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. We have a week, Bulma said. Figure out what you want. Really want. Not what you think you should want. Not what's easiest. What you actually want. She stood, releasing his hands, and walked inside. At the door, she paused. I'll be in the lab. Come find me if you want to talk. Or just sit. Either way. She disappeared into the house, leaving Naruto alone with the night and the lake and the impossible question of what came next. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat on the patio until dawn, watching the stars wheel overhead. He thought about Konoha, about the faces of everyone he'd left behind. Sakura's fierce smile. Sasuke's silent presence. Kakashi's lazy eye and hidden wisdom. Iruka-sensei, the first person who'd believed in him. He thought about the weight of the Hokage title, the responsibility he'd carried, the peace they'd all fought for. And he thought about this world. About Trunks' bright eyes and endless questions. About Vegeta's grudging respect and hidden vulnerability. About Bulma, sharp, brilliant, wounded Bulma, who'd found him broken and let him heal in her space without demanding anything in return. You're thinking in circles, Kurama rumbled. I know. Then stop. You already know what you want. You're just afraid to admit it. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. What if I'm wrong? Then you'll be wrong. You've been wrong before. You survived. A pause. You're not choosing between good and bad, Kit. You're choosing between two unknowns. That's not failure. That's life. The sun crested the horizon, painting the lake in gold. Naruto stood and walked inside. The lab was quiet when he entered. Bulma was exactly where she'd said she'd be, hunched over a holographic display, blue hair tangled, dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept either. She looked up when he entered. Waited. Naruto crossed the room and stopped in front of her. I don't know if this will work, he said. I don't know if we will work. I don't know if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life or the only right choice I've ever made. Bulma watched him, expression unreadable. But I know I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed. He took a breath. I want to stay. Not because it's easy. Not because I know how it ends. Because being here, being with you, feels like something I didn't know I was missing. Bulma stared at him for a long, terrible moment. Then she stood, crossed the distance between them, and kissed him. Not like before, not a brief brush on the cheek. Real. Deliberate. Her hands in his hair, his arms around her waist, the world narrowing to just this moment, just this contact. When they finally broke apart, she was crying. Silent tears tracking down her cheeks. You're an idiot, she whispered. I know. A complete idiot. I know. She laughed, wet and broken and real. Stay. Figure it out with me. Whatever it looks like. However complicated it gets. Just stay. Naruto pressed his forehead to hers. I'll stay. Behind them, unnoticed, Whis floated in the doorway for just a moment. His ancient eyes held something almost like warmth. Then he vanished, leaving them alone in the humming lab, holding onto each other in the only way that mattered. Together. What it completed. The severing happened 3 days later. Whis announced it casually over breakfast, a meal where Bulma's father had made pancakes and Trunks had eaten 17 of them and Vegeta had pretended not to notice the syrup on his son's face. The angel simply appeared in the kitchen doorway, serene as always, and said, The calculations are complete. We can sever the connection this afternoon. The table went silent. Naruto set down his fork. Beside him, Bulma's hand found his under the table, a brief pressure, there and gone. Today, Naruto said. Not a question. Today. Whis' eyes were kind, if angels could be kind. The dimensional wound is weakening on its own. If we wait longer, it may close unpredictably, with unknown consequences. Better to act now, while we can control the process. Vegeta grunted. Where do you need us? Nowhere. This is a delicate operation, not a battle. Lord Beerus will observe, but I will handle the severing directly. Whis looked at Naruto. You must be present. The connection is tied to you. Your energy must be the anchor for the closure. Bulma's grip tightened. Will it hurt him? Physically? Minimally. A sensation of unraveling, perhaps. Like pulling a thread from fabric. Whis paused. Emotionally? That I cannot predict. Severing a dimensional connection is not like closing a door. It is like cutting a root. The part of him that reached into his home world will be removed. Naruto understood. A piece of him would die today. The piece that still reached for Konoha, for his old life, for the people he'd left behind. He looked at Bulma. She was pale but steady. I'll be there, he said. The ceremony, if it could be called that, took place at the lake's edge. Whis had drawn intricate patterns in the air with his staff, glowing symbols that hung suspended like frozen light. Beerus floated nearby, arms crossed, watching with the bored expression of a cat observing a mildly interesting insect. Vegeta stood at the tree line, a silent sentinel. Bulma was beside Naruto, close enough to touch. The moment we begin, Whis explained, you will feel the connection strain. Do not fight it. Do not hold on. Let it go. If you resist, the severing will be incomplete, and we will have to begin again, assuming the wound doesn't collapse catastrophically. Naruto nodded. He understood. Let go. Stop holding on. Easy to say. Harder to do. Bulma turned to him. In front of everyone, Vegeta, Whis, Beerus, her son watching from the house, she took his face in her hands. I'm here, she said quietly. When it's over, I'll still be here. He covered her hands with his own. I know. She kissed him. Brief. Firm. A promise. Then she stepped back, joining Vegeta at the tree line. Naruto stood alone at the water's edge, facing Whis and the glowing symbols. Ready? Whis asked. Naruto thought of Konoha. Of the Hokage monument, his face carved into the mountain. Of Irika's smile, Sakura's fierce loyalty, Sasuke's silent acknowledgement. Of Ramen at Ichiraku's, the smell of rain on stone, the weight of the hat he'd worn for years. He thought of Kurama, the voice that had been with him since birth, the fox who'd become something like family. Together, Kurama rumbled. Whatever comes. Together. Ready, Naruto said. Whis raised his staff. The world turned inside out. It wasn't pain. It was something worse. It was loss. Naruto felt the connection to his home world like a physical thing, a cord of light running through his chest, his chakra, his very soul. As Whis' power touched it, the cord began to fray. Strand by strand, it dissolved. He saw faces. Sakura, older now, standing at his grave? No, not a grave. A memorial. They thought he was dead. They'd given up. The image flickered unclear, a possibility, not a certainty. A future that might never happen. He saw Sasuke, alone in the wilderness, searching. Always searching. For him? For answers? The image dissolved. He saw Konoha. Peaceful. Whole. Functioning without him. Let go, Kurama urged. Kit. Let go. But he couldn't. Not yet. There was one face he hadn't seen. Then, briefly, impossibly, Kakashi. His old sensei stood in a field of flowers, looking directly at him. Not at the sky, not through him. At him. Their eyes met across dimensions, across impossibility. Naruto. Kakashi's voice, faint as wind. Are you happy? The question broke something loose. Before Naruto could answer, the vision shattered. The cord dissolved completely. And Naruto, the part of him that had always reached for home, went dark. He fell to his knees at the water's edge, gasping. Empty. Hollow. Like someone had scooped out a part of his chest and left nothing behind. Kurama? A long, terrible silence. I'm here, the fox said finally. Quiet. Shaken. Barely. That was close. What happened? The connection was deeper than we knew. Part of me was tied to it too. If Whis had been wrong by a fraction. Kurama didn't finish. Naruto knelt in the wet sand, trying to breathe. Trying to feel something other than absence. Then Bulma was there. Kneeling beside him, her arms around him, pulling him against her. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here. Breathe. Just breathe. He buried his face in her shoulder and shook. Not crying, something rawer. Just tremors, running through him like aftershocks. Behind them, Whis observed quietly. It is done. The tear is sealed. He cannot return. Vegeta said nothing. But he moved closer, a silent presence at Bulma's back. Protecting. Watching. Present. Barris yawned. Boring. Call me if something interesting happens. He vanished. Whis smiled gently. I will remain nearby for a time, in case of complications. But I believe the worst is past. He looked at Naruto with something like compassion. You have lost something irreplaceable. But you have also gained something. Grief and gratitude can coexist. Give yourself time to learn how. He floated away, leaving them alone at the water's edge. They stayed there for a long time. The sun moved across the sky. The lake lapped at the shore. Eventually, Trunks crept down from the house and sat nearby, not speaking, just being present. Vegeta remained at the tree line, a motionless guardian. When Naruto finally lifted his head, the afternoon had turned golden. Sorry, he mumbled. His voice was wrecked. Don't, Bulma said firmly. Don't apologize for feeling things. Not to me. Never to me. He looked at her. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion in her face, the worry she'd been carrying, the fierce love that kept her here despite everything. I saw Kakashi, he said quietly. At the end. He asked if I was happy. Bulma's breath caught. I didn't get to answer. He paused. But I think I am. Here. With you. Despite everything. He laughed weakly. That's stupid, right? After all that, I'm happy? Bulma cupped his face in her hands. It's not stupid. It's the whole point. She kissed him gently. Not passionate, tender. A reassurance. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Tired but real. Come on, she said. Let's go home. Home. The word landed differently now. He looked at the house behind them, the domes, the gardens, the lab where he'd spent so many nights. He looked at Trunks, watching them with open curiosity. At Vegeta, whose nod was almost warm. At Bulma, who held his hand like she meant it. Not Konoha. Not the village he'd built. But something else. Something new. Home, Kurama agreed quietly. It's not what we planned. But it's real. Naruto stood, letting Bulma guide him toward the house. The severing was done. The door was closed. And for the first time since arriving, he didn't feel like a guest in someone else's world. He felt like he belonged. The months after the severing were quiet. Not empty, never empty, not in this house. Trunks still exploded through rooms with boundless energy. Vegeta still trained with violent dedication. Bulma still worked impossible hours in her lab. But the quiet was different now. Settled. Like the house had exhaled and finally relaxed. Naruto healed. Not physically, that had happened weeks ago. He healed in other ways. The hollow feeling in his chest slowly filled with something new. Not a replacement for what he'd lost. Something else. Something that could coexist with grief. He trained with Vegeta most mornings. The Scion pushed him harder now that the dimensional threat was gone, not as a test, but as something closer to camaraderie. They didn't talk about it. They never would. But when Vegeta grunted, not terrible. After a particularly hard session, Naruto understood what it meant. He spent afternoons with Trunks, teaching him shinobi techniques that didn't require chakra. The boy absorbed everything with terrifying speed. "You're going to be unstoppable," Naruto told him once. Trunks beamed. And evenings were for the lab. It had become ritual. After dinner, after Trunks was in bed, after Vegeta retreated to his gravity chamber, Naruto would find his way to Bulma's workspace. Sometimes she was deep in a project, and he'd sit in comfortable silence. Sometimes she was stuck, and they'd talk through the problem in ways that helped her think. Sometimes she just wanted company. Tonight was a company night. She wasn't working on anything specific, just tinkering with a small device, half her attention on it, half on him. He sat on his usual stool, watching her hands move. "Vegeta said you almost had him today," she said without looking up. "He's lying. He let me almost have him." "Probably," she smiled. "But he wouldn't let you almost have him if he didn't respect you. Trust me. I've known him long enough." Naruto considered that. "He's not what I expected." "Nothing in this world is what you expected." She set down her tool and turned to face him fully. "How are you? Really?" It was a question she asked often now. Not prying, just checking. Making sure the hollow place hadn't grown back. "Okay," he said. And meant it. "Some days are harder. But mostly okay." She nodded. "Good." A comfortable silence settled between them. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke again. "I've been thinking about what comes next." Naruto waited. "Not us," she clarified quickly. "I mean, yes, us, but not just us. You. Here. In this world." She gestured vaguely. "You can't just be the strange guy who lives in my guest room forever. You need something. Purpose. Place." He thought about it too. In his world, he'd been Hokage, leader, protector, symbol. Here, he was none of those things. Just a man with strange powers and a quieter past. "I don't know what I can do," he admitted. "My skills are different here. Less useful." "Less useful?" Bulma raised an eyebrow. "You've been teaching my son things no one else can teach him. You've been training with Vegeta, and holding your own. You've been..." She paused, searching for words. "You've been here. Present. Steady. Do you know how rare that is?" Naruto didn't know what to say. "I'm not saying you need to become a hero," she continued. "This world has enough of those. I'm saying you need to find what matters to you. Not what you think you should do. What you actually want to do." He thought about it. Really thought. "Help," he said finally. "I want to help. Not fight, not unless I have to. Just help. With whatever needs helping." He paused. "Is that enough?" Bulma looked at him for a long moment. Then she crossed the lab and kissed his forehead, a gentle, almost maternal gesture that somehow wasn't maternal at all. "Yeah," she said softly. "That's enough." Later that night, they sat on the patio, watching the same lake they'd watched 100 times. The stars were bright, unfamiliar constellations tracing stories he'd never learn. "Tell me about your world," Bulma said. "Not the battles. The small things." Naruto considered. "Ramen. There's this shop, Ichiraka's. I went there almost every day as a kid. The old man who ran it, he never treated me like a monster. Just a hungry kid." Bulma listened. "The training grounds. There was this one spot, by the river, where I'd go to be alone. Before I had friends. Before anyone believed in me." He paused. "Irika-sensei. He was my first teacher. The first person who said my name like it meant something good." "The marks on your face," Bulma said quietly. "You said you were born with them? But that's not the whole story, is it?" Naruto was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he told her about Kurama. About being a Jinchuriki. About the loneliness of carrying a monster inside him, the fear in people's eyes, the years of being seen as a weapon instead of a person. Bulma listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "That's why," she said finally. "That's why you're so good at just being there. You learned early that presence matters more than words. Because no one was there for you." Naruto hadn't thought of it that way. But she was right. "I'm sorry," she said, "that you had to go through that alone. I'm not alone anymore." It was a simple statement. But it landed like a stone in still water. Bulma reached out and took his hand. They sat like that, watching the stars, not needing to say more. The next morning, Vegeta found him at dawn. Train, the scion said. Not a question. Naruto nodded and followed. The session was brutal, harder than usual. Vegeta pushed him to limits he hadn't reached before, forcing him to adapt, to grow, to find strength he didn't know he had. By the end, Naruto could barely stand. But he was standing. Vegeta studied him with those dark, assessing eyes. You're different. Different how? Lighter. Heavier. Both. Vegeta seemed to struggle with the words. Before, you fought like someone waiting to leave. Now you fight like someone who's staying. Naruto considered that. He hadn't realized it showed. She's good for you, Vegeta said. The words were hard, forced out. Bulma. She's good for you. She's good for everyone. Vegeta almost smiled. No. She's good for me. That's different. But she's good for you too. He turned away. Don't waste it. He launched into the sky, leaving Naruto alone in the clearing. But this time, alone didn't feel lonely. That evening, Bulma was waiting on the patio with 2 glasses of something cold. Vegeta said you did well today. He said I was less pathetic. That's high praise. She laughed, a real laugh, warm and unexpected. God, I love that idiot. The words hung in the air. She'd said love? About Vegeta. It was true, and Naruto knew it, and somehow it didn't hurt. Their history was real. Their family was real. Whatever he and Bulma were building existed alongside that, not in competition with it. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Do you ever regret it? Marrying him? Building this life? Bulma was quiet for a moment. No. Not ever. It's been hard, so hard sometimes I didn't think we'd make it. But no regrets. She looked at him. Why? Because I want to understand what it means to love someone that complicated. To choose it every day. She studied him. Is that what you're doing? Choosing this? Us? He met her eyes. Every day. She didn't kiss him. Didn't move. Just held his gaze, and in that look was everything: gratitude, fear, hope, and something deeper that didn't have a name yet. Good, she said quietly. Me too. They sat until the stars came out, hands intertwined, the lake stretching dark and endless before them. Not a declaration. Not a promise. Just 2 people, choosing each other, one evening at a time. A year passed. Naruto didn't notice at first. Time moved differently here, marked not by seasons but by moments. Trunks' birthday. Vegeta's latest training milestone. The anniversary of Mrs. Briefs' passing, which Bulma spent quietly, mostly alone, but always emerged from with something new built. He'd found his purpose, slowly, in the spaces between. He helped where help was needed. Sometimes that meant training with Vegeta. Sometimes it meant teaching Trunks. Sometimes it meant sitting with Bulma's father, who was lonely without his wife, and listening to old stories about the early days of Capsule Corp. Sometimes it meant just being present, a steady presence in a house full of extraordinary people who didn't always know how to be ordinary. You've become part of the furniture, Bulma told him one night, half joking. If you left now, the house would feel wrong. Good wrong or bad wrong? Just wrong. Like missing a wall. He smiled, a real smile, easier now than it used to be. I'm not going anywhere. I know. She leaned against him, tired from a long day in the lab. That's the point. The shift happened gradually, like dawn. One morning, Naruto woke and realized he'd stopped counting the days since leaving Konoha. Stopped wondering what they were doing without him. Stopped reaching for a connection that was no longer there. He felt a pang of guilt. Should he grieve longer? Should he hold on harder? But it passed. Kurama stirred, a rumble of understanding. Moving on isn't betrayal, Kit. It's survival. I know. Do you? He thought about it. Really thought. Yeah. I think I do. That afternoon, he found Bulma in the lab. She was working on something new, some kind of energy dampener for Vegeta's training, and didn't notice him at first. He watched her hands move, the familiar rhythm of creation. Can I help? He asked. She looked up, surprised. With this? It's pretty technical. Not with that. With whatever needs doing. Today. Tomorrow. Always. She set down her tool and gave him her full attention. What brought this on? Nothing. Everything. He struggled to explain. I've been here a year. Living in your house, eating your food, being present. But I haven't been doing anything. Not really. I want to change that. Bulma studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still made his chest tighten. Okay, she said. You want to help? Help. Find what needs doing and do it. That's all any of us do. So he did. The next weeks, he threw himself into the life of the house. He fixed things, small repairs that had been ignored for months. He cooked, simple meals, nothing fancy, but better than takeout. He spent more time with Trunks, not just teaching but listening, being the kind of steady presence he'd never had as a child. He even helped in the lab, learning the basics of Bulma's technology. He'd never be a scientist, that wasn't who he was, but he could hand her tools, fetch components, be an extra pair of hands when she needed them. You're good at this, she said one night, after he'd successfully assembled a simple circuit under her direction. I had a good teacher. She laughed. Smooth. I try. They worked in comfortable silence after that, the hum of machinery filling the space between them. It felt right. Felt like something solid. Vegeta noticed. Of course he noticed. Vegeta noticed everything, even when he pretended not to. They were training one morning, a particularly brutal session that left Naruto gasping when the Saiyan spoke. You've changed. Naruto, flat on his back, stared at the sky. How? Before you moved like someone carrying a weight. Now you move like someone who's put it down. Vegeta's voice was gruff, but not unkind. You're still heavy. But it's different. Anchored instead of adrift. Naruto considered that. Is that good? It's not bad. Vegeta paused. For what it's worth, you're not an intruder anymore. Not to me. It was the closest Vegeta would ever come to acceptance. Naruto understood. Thanks, he said. Vegeta grunted and launched into the sky, training over. Naruto lay in the grass, watching the clouds, and smiled. That evening, Bulma found him on the patio. She sat beside him, close enough to touch, and for a while they just watched the sunset. The lake was calm, reflecting gold and orange. I've been thinking, she said finally. Dangerous. She elbowed him lightly. Shut up. I'm being serious. Sorry. She took a breath. I've been thinking about what comes next. For us. For you. She paused. You've been here a year. You're part of this house, part of this family. But you're still in the guest room. Still, temporary. Naruto looked at her. Are you asking me to leave? No. She turned to him, sudden and fierce. God, no. I'm asking you to stay. Really stay. Permanently. He didn't understand. There's a property adjacent to ours, she explained. Been empty for years. I bought it last week. She watched his face. It's not big. Just a house, some land. But it's close. Close enough to walk. Close enough to still be part of everything. Naruto stared at her. I'm not asking you to move out, she continued quickly. I'm asking if you want a place that's yours. Somewhere to put down roots. Somewhere that's not a guest room. She paused. And maybe, eventually, somewhere we can both be. When we're ready. If we're ready. The words hung in the air. Naruto thought about it. A home. His own space. Roots in a world that wasn't his. What about Vegeta? He asked. Bulma smiled. He knows. He's the one who suggested it. That surprised him. He did? He said you needed grounding? His word. I think he meant it as a compliment. Naruto laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. What do you think? Bulma asked. There was vulnerability in her voice, hidden beneath the confidence. She was offering something real. Something that could be rejected. Naruto took her hand. I think, he said slowly, that I'd like that. A place of my own. Close to you. Close to all of this. He squeezed her hand. I think I'd like that a lot. Bulma's smile was like sunrise. Good, she said. Good. They sat together as the last light faded, the future opening before them like the lake, vast, unknown, but no longer frightening. Just real. The house was small. That was the first thing Naruto noticed when Bulma showed it to him. Small, compared to the brief's compound. A simple structure, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living area with windows that faced the lake. It needed work, cosmetic mostly, but some structural repairs too. It's a project, Bulma admitted. I thought you might like that. Something to build. Naruto walked through the empty rooms, his footsteps echoing on hardwood floors. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light. It was quiet, not the humming silence of the lab, but something older. Peaceful. It's perfect, he said. Bulma raised an eyebrow. It's a fixer-upper. It's mine. He turned to her. Or it will be. That's what matters. She smiled. Okay. Then let's fix it up. The renovation took months. Naruto learned to use tools he'd never seen, power saws, levels, things that required electricity instead of chakra. He made mistakes, fixed them, made new mistakes. Bulma helped when she could, but mostly it was his project. His hands learning new skills. His vision taking shape. Trunks came by after school sometimes, helping, in ways that usually created more work. Naruto didn't mind. The boy's energy was a gift, even when it meant resanding a floor or repatching a wall. Vegeta came once, stood in the doorway, surveyed the chaos, grunted something that might have been approval, and left. It was the most supportive thing he could do. Kurama was quiet during those months. Not absent, never absent, but watchful. Observing as Naruto built something with his own hands piece by piece, in a world that had become home. You're different, the fox said one night, as Naruto sat on the half-finished porch, watching stars. Settled. Is that bad? No. It's just, new. I've known you your whole life. I've never seen you like this. Naruto thought about it. I've never had this before. A place to build. Time to build it. Someone to build it for. Someone to build it with. He smiled. Yeah. Someone to build it with. The house was finished in spring. Bulma threw a small party, just family, close friends. Goku came, finally meeting Naruto properly, his endless enthusiasm a warm contrast to Vegeta's perpetual grumpiness. Gohan brought books and quiet conversation. Krillin made bad jokes and ate too much. Even Chi-Chi came, relaxing slightly when she saw the house was practical and not some kind of alien mansion. Near the end of the evening, Naruto stood on his new porch, watching the lake reflect the setting sun. Bulma joined him, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Congratulations, she said, handing him one. You're a homeowner. He laughed. In another world I was Hokage. Leader of my village. Here I'm just a guy with a house. Is that a bad thing? He considered. No. It's good. Different but good. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. I love you. The words came out before he planned them. Simple. Quiet. Real. Bulma turned to look at him. Her eyes were wide, but not surprised. Like she'd been waiting. I love you too, she said. I have for a while. I just didn't know how to say it. Naruto set down his glass and took her hands. I don't know what this looks like, he said. Long term. With Vegeta, with Trunks, with everything. I don't know how it works. Neither do I. But I know I want to try. I want to figure it out. With you. Bulma stepped closer, close enough to feel her warmth. Then we figure it out, she said. Together. She kissed him, soft, warm, full of promise. The lake stretched before them, dark and endless. The house stood behind them, solid and real. And for the first time since arriving in this world, Naruto felt completely, utterly at home. Epilogue: Still water. Years passed. Naruto's hair grew longer, streaked with gray at the temples. His face gained lines, not from battle, but from laughter, from sun, from the slow accumulation of time lived fully. He never became a fighter in this world. Not really. He trained with Vegeta sometimes, kept his skills sharp, but the days of world-ending battles were behind him. When threats arose, he helped where he could, tactical support, strategic advice, the wisdom of someone who'd seen war and chosen peace. Mostly, he just lived. He watched Trunks grow from a bright-eyed boy into a capable young man, then a warrior in his own right. He saw the pride in Vegeta's eyes when Trunks achieved things his father never could. He saw Bulma age with grace and brilliance, her mind as sharp as ever, her inventions still changing the world. He built a life. Small moments, accumulated like stones in a riverbed. Morning coffee on the porch. Evening walks along the lake. Lab sessions with Bulma that stretched past midnight. quiet dinners with Vegeta that required almost no words. Visits from Goku, who never quite understood Naruto's past but accepted him completely. Kurama remained with him, the fox's presence a constant warmth. As the years passed, their bond deepened, not as Jinchuriki and Beast, but as something closer to family. Two souls who'd found peace together. One evening, late, Naruto sat on his porch alone. Bulma was at the main house, dealing with some crisis or another. She'd be over later, or maybe not. It didn't matter. They'd learned long ago that presence wasn't measured in hours. The lake was still. The sky was clear. The world was quiet. "You're thinking," Kurama rumbled. "Always." "About what?" Naruto considered. "About her. About this. About how strange it is to be happy." "Strange?" "I spent so long fighting. So long alone. I never thought I'd have this. Peace. Quiet. Someone to share it with. And now? Now I don't know what I did to deserve it. But I'm grateful." Kurama was quiet for a moment. "You deserve it, Kit. You always did. You just had to survive long enough to find it." Naruto smiled. "Yeah. I guess so." Footsteps on the path. He didn't need to turn. "Thought you'd be here," Bulma said, settling into the chair beside him. "Crisis averted?" "For now. There's always another crisis." "That's the truth." They sat together, watching the last light fade. The lake reflected the stars, endless and deep. "Naruto?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you fell out of that sky." He laughed softly. "Me too." She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. They sat like that as the night deepened, two people from different worlds who'd somehow found each other. Not a grand romance. Not a story for the ages. Just a quiet love, built slowly, piece by piece, in the spaces between words. The lake was still. The stars were bright. And for now, that was enough.